It was a dazzling evening in New York City, the kind where the elite gathered to flaunt their wealth and status. Inside an exclusive high-end boutique, Veronica Sinclair, a billionaire socialite known for her ruthless attitude and designer obsession, browsed through the latest collection. Her manicured fingers traced the delicate fabric of a silk gown, her nose slightly wrinkled as if the air itself wasn't rich enough for her taste. Then he walked in, a tall black man in a simple yet well-tailored suit. His presence alone disrupted the pristine energy of the store, or at least that's how Veronica saw it. She glanced at him once, then twice, her sharp blue eyes narrowing. His confidence irritated her. He didn't belong. She turned to the boutique manager, an eager young woman desperate to stay in Veronica's good graces. "Why is he here?" Veronica whispered, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is a private boutique, not some streetwear outlet." The manager hesitated, but before she could respond, the man calmly picked up a jacket from the display, an exquisite piece of craftsmanship. He examined it with a trained eye, nodding in silent approval. Veronica scoffed, loud enough for him to hear. "Are you lost?" she said, her voice cold, sharp, meant to cut. "That price tag has 4 zeros, dear. You might want to try the clearance rack, wherever they keep that." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he smirked slightly, amusement flashing in his deep brown eyes. "Nice stitching," he murmured, ignoring her jab. "But the lapels are slightly off from the original design." Veronica's patience wore thin. "Original design?" She laughed, a high-pitched sound that made the manager shift uncomfortably. "Oh, so you think you know fashion? Let me guess. You sell knockoffs downtown?" This time the man did chuckle, low, confident. He turned to fully face her, his posture relaxed, but his presence undeniable. "Something like that," he said. Veronica shook her head, pulling a dress from the rack and holding it up dramatically. This is a Carson Laurent original. The level of craftsmanship, the elegance, a man like you wouldn't understand." She held the dress against herself, admiring her reflection in the mirror. "I've been collecting Carson Laurent pieces for years. His work is flawless, timeless, and unlike you, he belongs here." The boutique fell silent. The manager, now shifting nervously, opened her mouth to say something. She didn't. The man watched Veronica for a moment, as if debating something. Then, slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand. "Nice to meet you," he said smoothly. "I'm Carson Laurent." Veronica froze. The dress nearly slipped from her fingers. The air itself shifted, tension crackling like a wire about to snap. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She blinked. Once, twice. No, impossible. She let out a breathy laugh, though it sounded weaker now. "You're lying." Carson merely raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" The boutique manager swallowed hard. "Ms. Sinclair, he's telling the truth." Veronica's entire world tilted. Her mind scrambled for an escape, an excuse, anything to erase what had just happened. But the brand was founded by me," Carson said, finishing her sentence. "I built it. Every stitch, every concept. And this," he gestured around, "this is my work." Veronica's throat went dry. The very man she'd mocked was the genius behind her entire wardrobe. Carson took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. "Tell me something, Veronica. Do I still not belong?" Her stomach twisted into knots. She wanted to disappear, to rewind time, to erase every smug comment, every dismissive glance. But it was too late. The boutique manager, sensing the shift, suddenly found a reason to be anywhere but here. Carson took a final glance at the dress in her trembling hands. "That one looks nice on you," he said casually. "Too bad I don't sell to people like you." Veronica's face drained of color. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Carson said, adjusting his cufflinks. "I have the power to decide who wears my brand and who doesn't." Veronica's heart pounded. You can't." "I can," Carson interrupted, his voice cool. "And I will." He turned, giving her one last glance before heading toward the door. The boutique manager, still wide-eyed, scrambled after him, fumbling over her words. Mr. Laurent, I'm so sorry about." He waved her off with a smirk. "Nothing I haven't seen before." And with that he walked out. Veronica stood there, stunned, humiliated, powerless. Her favorite designer, her idol, the man she had unknowingly worshipped through his work, had just banished her from his empire. Justice had been served, or so she thought, because the next morning, as she stepped out of her penthouse, paparazzi swarming, her phone buzzed with a notification, one that made her blood run cold. Breaking news: fashion mogul Carson Laurent to expose racist socialite who mocked him in luxury boutique. Live tonight at 8 p.m. Veronica's breath hitched. No. She had made a terrible mistake. And now, the walls were closing in. Veronica Sinclair paced the marble floor of her penthouse, phone clutched in her trembling hands. The headline on the screen glared back at her, every word slicing through her like a dagger. Breaking news: fashion mogul Carson Laurent to expose racist socialite who mocked him in luxury boutique. Live tonight at 8 p.m. Her world was unraveling. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Then another. Texts, emails, missed calls. The sharks were circling. She opened a message from her publicist, Candace, the only person she trusted right now. "Candace, call me. Now." Veronica exhaled sharply, hitting the call button. "Candace, tell me you're handling this." A beat of silence. Then, a heavy sigh from the other end. "Veronica, what the hell did you do? It's not what it looks like." Veronica snapped, her voice cracking. "I didn't know who he was." "That's the problem," Candace shot back. "You assumed. And now the internet is eating you alive." Veronica turned to the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city that had once adored her. "How bad is it?" "Bad." Candace let out a bitter laugh. "You're trending. Everywhere. Hashtag Cancel Veronica is the #1 hashtag. Fashion blogs, news outlets, influencers, everyone is watching Carson's interview tonight. If he publicly calls you out, your career is over." Veronica's stomach twisted. She had spent years building her reputation as the queen of high fashion, the ultimate trendsetter. One word from Carson Laurent, and she'd be blacklisted overnight. She clenched her jaw. No, she wouldn't go down like this. "What if I apologize?" she asked. "An apology? Now? After you humiliated him in public?" Candace scoffed. "It'll look desperate. You need to get ahead of this, Veronica." Veronica's mind raced. Damage control. That's what she needed. She straightened her spine. "Set up a meeting with Carson. I'll handle this myself." The meeting wasn't easy to arrange. Carson Laurent wasn't a man who took calls from people like her. But money talked, and so did power. After hours of back-channeling and calling in favors, Candace finally secured a private sit-down at Carson's studio. Veronica arrived dressed for war. A sleek white power suit, designer heels clicking against the concrete floors. She carried herself with the same confidence that had made her a force in high society. But as she stepped inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Nervousness. Carson sat across the room, flipping through sketches, his expression unreadable. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Veronica swallowed hard. Carson, thank you for meeting with me. He didn't look up. I was curious. She forced a smile. Look, I realize now that I made a terrible mistake, and I want to make it right. Carson finally met her eyes. Do you? Yes, she said quickly. I spoke without thinking, and I deeply regret my words. You're an icon, Carson. Your work has defined fashion for years. I was out of line. Carson leaned back, folding his arms. Tell me, Veronica, are you apologizing because you mean it, or because your empire is crumbling? Veronica hesitated. She knew the right answer, but Carson Laurent wasn't a fool. He could smell dishonesty a mile away, so she told the truth. Both, she admitted, her voice quieter now. I've spent my life surrounded by people who look like me, who think like me, and I never questioned it. But last night, I saw what it's like to be on the other side, and I didn't like it. Carson studied her, his sharp eyes dissecting every word. So, you want me to fix this for you? Veronica swallowed. I want a chance to fix it myself. Silence stretched between them. Then Carson smirked. Not a friendly smirk, a knowing one. You know, he said, standing up, I've dealt with people like you my entire career. The ones who think power is tied to skin color. The ones who decide who belongs before they even ask a name. Veronica's fingers curled into fists. Carson held up a hand. But here's the thing, Veronica. I don't need your apology. And I don't need your approval. You need mine. The words hit like a slap. Veronica's face burned. Carson walked to the window, looking out at the city. So here's what's going to happen, he continued. Tonight I will go on air. I will tell the world what happened in that boutique. Veronica's pulse pounded in her ears. But, Carson said, turning to her, I'll also tell them that you, Veronica Sinclair, are about to do something you've never done before. Veronica's breath caught. Which is? Carson's smirk widened. You're going to put your money where your mouth is. You want to prove you've changed? Then show the world. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Carson said, stepping closer. You're going to invest. Not in another billion-dollar label. Not in another high society gala. You're going to launch a mentorship program for Black designers. Funded by you. Veronica's lips parted. That's expensive. Carson cut in. Uncomfortable? He tilted his head. Good. Veronica swallowed hard. And if I do this? Carson shrugged. Then I'll tell the world you're learning. That maybe, just maybe, you're worth a second chance. Veronica stared at him. She could walk away, take her chances, let the media tear her apart. Or she could take Carson's offer, not just to save herself, but to prove, maybe even to herself, that she could be better. She exhaled slowly, then nodded. Fine, she said. I'll do it. Carson smiled. Good choice. The interview aired that night. Millions tuned in. Carson recounted every detail, the boutique, the insults, the assumptions. But he also spoke of redemption, of change, of power being used right. And Veronica? She went on record. She announced her new initiative, the Laurent Sinclair Foundation, dedicated to mentoring and funding Black designers in high fashion. The internet exploded. Some called it PR. Others called it a step forward. And Carson? He just watched from the sidelines, knowing one thing for certain. Veronica Sinclair had been forced to learn the hard way. And whether she truly changed or not, the world would never let her forget.